The 2021 Motul FIM Superbike World Championship reaches its conclusion, and it's the perfect place for an end-of-season beach party, the Eden-like island of Lombok. The Pirelli Indonesian round, held on 4 occasions between 1994 and 97 at the Sentul International Circuit just outside the capital of Jakarta, has a new venue for a new generation. Construction of the 4.3-kilometre Mandalika International Circuit only started in August of last year, and it was inaugurated by President Joko Widodo just 7 days ago. It boasts 17 corners, the majority right-handers, the first at the end of a 507-metre start-finish straight here, one of the main overtaking hotspots in the 2 other classes as well as superbikes this weekend. The Turn 10 pinch point has seen plenty of action over the weekend as well, but it's the penultimate corner that provides the longest braking zone, 6.5 seconds on the brakes into the circuit's slowest corner. Elsewhere, far faster, Toprak Razgatlioglu averaging 166 kilometres per hour in his under 93-second lap record yesterday. Good afternoon and welcome back to the Mandalika International Circuit. And we have a new world champion, and it is as new as you like, because hot off the press, Toprak Razgatlioglu with a second-place finish earlier on today behind Jonathan Rea cannot now be caught in the 2021 standings. He comes into the final race 25 points up on Jonathan Rea. Even a victory for Rea and a failure to score for Razgatlioglu, and countback would work in Toprak's favour. So we've had the championship celebrations, we've put them all to one side. Now we're going to have a race for pride, and a race in potentially wet conditions.
Yeah, look at those dark clouds hovering overhead. We all know what happened this time yesterday with the Superbike class. Hopefully we're able to get this race to go ahead. As it stands right now, there has been some spots of rain. It hasn't really come down too heavily at this stage, but the whole paddock's going to be a little bit nervous looking up to the skies.
Yes, the only thing still in play here is the Manufacturers' Championship. 20 points, the current lead for Yamaha ahead of Ducati, and Kawasaki now out of the running, 49 points back. But Yamaha looking set to complete the set after their outfit, Pata Yamaha outfit, were confirmed as team award winners earlier on today, as well as Toprak Razgatlioglu's Riders' Championship victory. Now looking good for the Manufacturers' title as well.
You can see some formation flying overhead, and we've seen a bit of that through the course of this year with some real displays on the racetrack. Toprak Razgatlioglu and Jonathan Rea side by side once again at times during the course of this morning's race, and that's been the battle we've seen all the way through this season, and it's been an on-track battle unlike anything else I've seen over the years, and this is what's going to make this afternoon's race really interesting. There's nothing to play for now. Everyone's just going out there to try and finish off their season as strong as possible.
One thing that you said earlier on that I absolutely loved, you said it was fitting that Jonathan Rea would be the outgoing world champion and do it with a race victory in race number 1. Fine performance from Jonathan Rea. Wasn't quite enough because there was no one who could get between himself and Toprak Razgatlioglu to keep the title fight alive into a decider.
Yeah, his 200th race with Kawasaki, his 96th win, a 48% hit rate there for Jonathan Rea. Really impressive stuff to be able to have that kind of success, and that shows the bar that he set for Toprak to really come back on.
And it does also demonstrate that it's not going to be something that Rea will take lying down. He looked extremely emotional when he was interviewed earlier on today about seeing this championship winning run come to an end after 6 seasons on top of this sport. All good things have to come to an end, as I said earlier on. Toprak Razgatlioglu making sure of that.
Yeah, and certainly for Toprak, he enjoyed the aftermath of that success in the championship, finishing in second to Jonathan Rea. Very fitting, like I said, about them to be able to have that success for both of them. Jonathan Rea, really impressive this morning to take that race victory, and it was really the sign of what we've seen all the way through this season. Rea's had to be at the top of his game to take the fight to Toprak Razgatlioglu, and Jonathan Rea at the top of his game is as good as anybody. That shows just how good a job Toprak and Yamaha has done this year.
Was Rea nodding along with you there when we saw him in his pit box? It certainly looked like it. Jonathan Rea, the race winner of race number 1, and can he immediately set the tone for 2022 by taking a double to finish this season and this weekend?
Well, it's the one thing that I think everyone in the paddock's going to be excited about. Now, we're going to have a few months off for the winter, but you're going to have Jonathan Rea focused on only one thing, winning that World Championship back. Toprak's going to enjoy his time off over the winter. You'd imagine he's still going to be doing a fair bit of riding, but for Toprak, for Rea, they're going to be building up to next season. Scott Redding's got his final race for Ducati. Last chance to be able to win on that V4R before he switches to BMW. He'll have his first test next next month in Jerez. And then you've got the likes of Garrett Gerloff in the second row of the grid. Really disappointing race this morning for Garrett. See if he can finish off the season strong. Obviously, it's been a real up and down season for Garrett Gerloff. Andrea Locatelli's got a chance to take fourth in the World Championship as a rookie. Tom Sykes signing off from BMW, potentially signing off from World SBK from the second row of the grid. There's storylines left, right and centre heading into this race.
Well, thankfully you've covered them all. We can all have a nice rest now until the race gets underway, and then we can start commentating. I think I'll save myself for it. Wet track is the latest information that we've got. The pictures in advance of going live for this session, we could see the rain coming down.
And what's important about that is it's already been declared a wet track, so we shouldn't have a delay like we had this morning during the race one for riders to potentially change tyres. With it being declared a wet track at this stage, that should mean that it's a wet race. Everyone has to go to the grid with the tyres they want to use, and unless we end up with a downpour similar to what we had yesterday, we should be able to get things underway as quickly as possible.
If we have a wet track, we're going to see something slightly different perhaps to what we saw earlier on today.
Yeah, certainly. Nobody really knows what to expect if it's a fully wet track, because even in the opening race of the day, we saw everyone out there on slick tyres through spots of rain, patches of damp out in the racetrack. This is going to be a very different story.
Up at the front of the field then, the top three in the World Championship will finish Razgat, Lioglu, Ray and Redding, and that is how they will start in this race too. Of course, the grid exactly the same for this race as it was for this morning's race one. That's as a result of the cancellation of the Tissot Superpole race. That was because of the postponement of race one here yesterday.
Yeah, those Indonesian fans taking pictures and videos of the skies, they're actually still looking at that acrobatic display above us rather than the skies and the clouds. But certainly everyone else in the paddock is going to be keeping an eye on the clouds. It has gotten darker in the last half an hour here in Indonesia, and what we'll see is if the temperature comes down again, that was the indicator yesterday that the rain was on its way.
Mentioned the Manufacturers' Championship still yet to be completely settled. The only other major SBK award still to be determined is the Independent Riders' Championship, and Garrett Gerloff leads that, but only by an 8-point margin now over Axel Bassani, who again had a strong race earlier on today. And Bassani is proving himself something of a specialist once there's been a little bit of rain. In mixed conditions, he seems to have a confidence that most rookies or most young riders certainly don't.
Yeah, really good feel in those conditions, and willing to push on as well. And Axel's had a really impressive season all the way through this year. He's in that battle with Garrett Gerloff for top independent in the championship standings, only 8 points behind him, and if we had a repeat of this morning, he'd be in a position to jump ahead of him in those championship standings into 7th. Has been a really impressive season for Axel and for the Moto Corsa squad. Think back to last year, they had Taddy Mercado on that bike. Turned out a decent bike, but it's been this year they've made that big step forward. Yes,
after seeing Garrett Gerloff qualifying 4th and Bassani behind him, a row behind him in 7th, you might have thought that that was going to be over as a contest, and that Garrett Gerloff would be able to do enough from that 4th position on the grid. But Axel Bassani doing a great job. Well, this is spectacular, isn't it? Saw them rehearsing this earlier in the week, and it was outstanding entertainment just from ground level, let alone to see it from on board. Someone's worked hard to make that happen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, just looking at them as they come across our commentary box window as well now, hopefully we're able to see some clear skies. It looked actually quite nice from the onboard to see some clear skies out there. Looking out from the commentary box window, it is still dark here. We'll wait and see what that weather does where it turns. Obviously, this is going to be Chaz Davis's last turn in World SBK as well today.
Yes, you've mentioned the major stories of this race, and one of the side stories, as it were, is Chaz Davies' last appearance. He's waving to the cameras, and he'll be waving goodbye to the Superbike World Championship at the end of 2021 after an illustrious career, the former world number 2, of course, and Ducati's all-time record starter. This will be his 268th start in the Superbike World Championship here today, and it will also be his last.
Yeah, 32 race victories for Chaz Davis. Only Troy Corser, Tom Sykes, Norrie Haggie, Troy Bayliss, Carl Fogarty and Jonathan Ray have won more than him. I think that gives you a good indication of the kind of company he's been keeping over the course of his Superbike career. Really has been an impressive 10 years at the front for Chaz Davis.
And everyone will remember how many podiums he's got. 99. Still hoping for that 100th, although that looks a stretch. But perhaps the wet track could benefit him here today. Just saw Andrea Locatelli. Locatelli is another rider with something riding on this final race of the season. And Locatelli, because he currently sits only 1 point clear of Michael Ruben Rinaldi in the championship standings. And as far as that's concerned, Rinaldi starting well down the the order from P14, and he was well beaten in race 1. Locatelli gaining 9 points over him.
Yeah, you can see Tito Rabat making his way out to the grid, and Rabat from that rear tyre, you could see just how much water there was out there. He was able to cut through that on the road down pit lane. You can see Rinaldi heads out now on a slick tyre as well. And you can see spots of rain there. We did just hear from Anthony down on the grid saying there are spots out there. Luckily for Anthony, he does have a jacket today. He's not going to be caught out twice in the one weekend.
Yes, there were a fair few white Dorna shirts yesterday that we saw from members of staff walking around that looked a little bit sodden, shall we say, and the riders looked a little bit sodden as well. Yesterday afternoon was something else, though. This is a very different scenario to what we saw yesterday. The rain came down so heavily it was genuinely monsoon, and that's how I referred to it earlier on today. And we had the staff pretty much brushing with mops and so on water out of the way, but the circuit itself was too far underwater. We saw marshals at one point in replay images with the water up to their ankles. That was never going to be rideable, let alone raceable.
Yeah, huge amounts of rain fell yesterday in a very quick space of time, and the shower actually kept going for a couple of hours at one stage, and then it did come back again during the evening. So hopefully we're able to get this race underway fully for the 21 laps, finish the season strongly. You can see Toprak leaving the pits there as well, Jonathan Ray. Everyone going to the grid on slick tyres, even though there is that notification for it to be a wet track, but clearly not enough has fallen for the riders to opt to make a change.
It's something of a changing of the guard in 2021. We've been talking about it all season. It feels like there's been a progression over the course of the campaign. Jonathan Ray being replaced as the world champion by Toprak Razgatlioglu only adds to that feeling. Chaz Davies, who certainly up until this season has been one of the regulars in terms of world championship podiums, he's making his way away from the grid and away from the Superbike World Championship. As it rains now heavily in the pit lane, you can see it on the camera pictures as well as from our commentary box window. Chaz Davies waving goodbye to the spectators who are amassed at the top of the balcony above the pit lane, as well as the grandstand on the other side of the circuit, outside of the gravel trap on the exit of the final turn. And Davies joins the circuit. Riders have just over 2 minutes now until pit lane closes. As I was saying, a bit of a changing of the guard. Chaz Davies retiring, several major riders moving teams as well for next season, the likes of Scott Redding and Alvaro Bautista, and also riders who don't yet have their rides confirmed for next season. We're without Leon Haslam, unfortunately, from today's race as a result of injury, not able to recover from his surgery on time, and Tom Sykes, who we're waiting to find out what he might be doing next season. It's certainly going to be a BMW farewell for him. But Chaz Davies makes his way round. I don't think he would have picked a race quite this unpredictable to have as his final race, would he? Yeah,
well, you can see for Davis how wet it is out there on the track. You can see Garrett Gerloff, he went to the grid on those intermediate tyres, and we saw most of the rest of the field head to the grid on slick tyres. So very different conditions on one side of the track to the other.
When you saw where Chaz Davies was riding and the rain was coming down that heavily, though, you would have thought almost full wets, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and certainly on that section of the track it looks that way. You can see for Tom Sykes, red spot on his rear tyre. He's out there on the super soft compound tyre, so he's gone out there on a slick tyre to get to that point. Riders will have an intermediate tyre and a full wet tyre available to them, and you'd have to say, as it is right now, you'd expect riders to be out there in the inters. You can see how easy Tom's having to take it. Yes,
Tom Sykes, former world champion, of course, in the Superbike series. He's not yet confirmed for a ride as far as next season is concerned, and we're waiting to find out what it might be as to whether he moves over to Moto America even, or back to the British Championship, or whether the latest rumours that he might be able to find a satellite, an independent team to stay in the Superbike World Championship for 2022. Sykes, though, could be looking potentially at a final race in the Superbike World Championship, and it's been an illustrious career for him, of course, as well. The one thing he's got over Chaz Davies is that World Championship title that he managed in his early days with Kawasaki.
Yeah, and for Tom Sykes, a lot of time at the front of the field in World SBK, a lot of race victories as well for the number 66, and an awful lot of pole positions. There's a reason he became known as Mr. Super Pole. But certainly for Tom, he's going to hope to be able to finish the season on a bit of a high. He's actually raced quite well